It's what Peter Thiel talks about, right? He says the restaurant industry, and you're always like, no, I'm the only restaurant in this city or in this town that serves traditional Indian food. And so you think like, oh, I've narrowed it down, like I'm the only one, I'm going to succeed. But then people have options, right? Like they'll eat at home, they'll order pizza, they're not going to eat Indian every day. So you end up competing with a bunch of people, and it's like it's a very tough
Yeah.
business to be in. But that's sort of how I see social media agencies. They're interchangeable.
You're about to hear a conversation between two agency owners who collectively have over 30 years of experience helping brands sell millions of dollars. Enjoy the episode.
Get in motion, 2024. Okay.
Perfect.
No, una
Click
cosa,
it out. Wait.
one of the concepts is, you know, and there's a debate. This is I'm just throwing this out there, and whoever listens to this podcast, they can have their thoughts and we can share them and all that stuff. And this is not, please, I don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah.
But back in 2012, you could say, I know Facebook marketing. I'm the marketing ninja. I'm the social media ninja. I know where to put your advertisement. I know what content gets people engaged. I know that put a post about a cute penguin and a cute panda and say which one is the cutest one of them both, and then get activity and all that stuff. That was in 2012. Facebook, Facebook starts, kind of getting a little bit older. Somebody said that, Facebook is social media for old people now.
Yeah.
But then, Instagram comes out and then it's like a whole new dynamic. So pretty much more visual. Then you have the whole concept of hashtags and then, where to put your placement and all these things. And still, content on that space was king. Content is still king. There's no debate on that. I mean, but I'm talking specifically with social media. Uh, but then the more people started entering into that space, and the more people wanted to become, like Mr. Beast, or the more people started like trying to be influencers about everything and all that stuff. Like you see that this space is just, creating, just creating a lot of noise. Add the AI element to it, and now you have a lot of, noise plus what is what is real and what is not. And don't say that things done in AI are not real. We already had this concept in previous episodes, but there is this concept of that. But I'm having this situation where I am like, well, I am to the point where if the agency wanted to hire a social media expert, where would this expertise lie? Or this expertise be? So you are hired to be a social media expert because advertisement for social media, which in itself it's its own
World.
strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the world, and you have to be, you have to be good at A/B testing, putting different things, checking your numbers every day, doing your data analysis and all that stuff. And I think that is in itself something that I do value
Yeah.
versus the other person that is like, no, I want to create content for social media so that your brand is different and it looks good and all that stuff. So that's where I'm debating right now. That I just don't find, I need somebody right now that probably if I'm hiring somebody that does social media, I'm thinking that I don't need to go with an expert in social media. I just need somebody who can understand social media in general and can an organized individual, because you do have a lot of as an agency you do have to manage a lot of agencies and all stuff. But like content wise, you can pretty much give you meet with a client, you get a whole perspective of what it is they need. You strategize the big portion, and then you just give this menu to an individual who can execute, rather than having somebody who's going to be like, you know what, I am going to really develop this specific content for you for social media, blah blah blah. The reason why I'm debating this is because there is no way that you can do at this point. There is no way that even if you are awesome at creating excellent content for social media, and you just came up with a new product and you are excellent at that, if you don't have the money to back up that advertisement, there's nothing that you really there's nothing that you're really gonna do. So
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think it really depends on sort of like the algorithms and the social media channels you choose. I think, for example, Twitter, from what I understand, hasn't really made the switch to like it's been like a partial switch, but it's what they call the TikTok TikTokification. I don't know how you say it. But it's everything. Everyone's becoming more like TikTok basically because TikTok figured out that um,
It's
TikTok figured out.
it's
Sorry.
yeah, TikTok is action, 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 action. Like,
Yeah.
dopamine, 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 dopamine. So,
Dopamine,
so
yeah, yeah. Well, it's that, but they also figured out like your interests are what really matter, not so much who you're connected with. And so they became like this separate social media channel that's not like, oh, I'm seeing baby pictures of Romeo's new baby because we're friends. I think
you're
Instagram and Facebook are like a mix, right? You have some things you're interested in, but then also your friends, and you'll see the post. Let's say you're really, like I always give this example. You're into surfing. I'll see that you're posting stuff about surfing, but maybe I don't care at all about surfing, right? So I think social media, like these big companies, have realized, oh wait, the interest graph is actually super interesting. I think there's a lot there. There's more engagement there. And so, sure, Instagram has like the reels, and then YouTube has YouTube Shorts, and everybody's competing with the dopamine thing, with the dopamine, with their better dopamine machine. But then also, okay, let's do that based on interest, not so much on who they follow. So they're also changing the algorithms. That also means it's more, it's sort of more transparent for everyone, and more, there's more equity, like there's more equality. Sorry, there's more equality for everyone there. And so if you actually do a really good video and you post it on TikTok, you can get 1 million views on your first video, because it doesn't matter who's following you. It doesn't. None of that matters. What matters is people watch the video to the end. They repeat the video. It's based on the interest of people. So if your video is about B2B content marketing, or your video is about Facebook ads, or whatever your video is about, skiing or surfing, like TikTok will find the people that are interested in that and show them that. And then if the video is actually something that they like, see to the end, maybe share, etc., like that tells the algorithm, okay, this video is actually good. Let me keep showing it to more and more people that are into that. So I think but I think so. For example, Twitter, I don't think has made that change as strongly as the others have. So YouTube Shorts is doing that. Instagram is doing that. More of that.
it's interesting because when you put it that way, I mean, thinking like, yeah, TikTok is pretty much pure entertainment based on interest. Let's say,
Yeah.
as information, but maybe Twitter is still more of like, let's have a conversation. Let's
Maybe, yeah, yeah. I mean, it still has some of that, right? Like, it'll show me stuff that I'm interested in, and remember they open sourced like their algorithm, so people went in. And there's like, if you turn it into like a point system, you'll see that if you share it with a picture, you get more points. There's a bunch of stuff, right? If you have an external link, like you get hit by the algorithm, it won't show it as much because they want people to stay on the platform. So I think there's like a science to that, but I would argue it's just very hard to say I'm a social media expert because of what you're saying, right? Like, what is it? TikTok? Is it Instagram? What is it, right? Like, is it all of them? Is it paid media? Is it organic? Like,
the other thing too is
text?
and let's do the game. Okay, let's do that. Well, just so I hire a social media expert. So then you bring that person on board, and it's like, okay, so yeah, you can tell me that this platform is for, this platform is for entertainment. We can do this, this, and this. This platform is more for people who want to learn something or share something with their family. Okay, let's go into that. This is more for like this is very content for Facebook. Great, you have your patterns and all that stuff. Okay, so what do I adapt my agency to pretty much develop? What type of content should I develop? Should I be able to develop one content for all of them, or one content for a specific of them? And if I'm going to go ahead, and which is pretty much what everybody, as you and I know, that you should do, you should try to target each of those different social medias with the best content possible to fit that. But then you have a lot of content being created.
Yeah, of course. I think, I don't know. I think we're a social media agency is like a bad strategy. I think because you're competing with the guy who woke up yesterday and said, I'm going to start a social media agency tomorrow. Gets a landing page up, says I've been doing this, I'm doing this. Like, I'll run your social media channels. Like, I think it's so commoditized that it's a bad business to be in. Now, if you say I'm
I'm a TikTok expert.
right. I'm a, maybe for TikTok for golf, and this is all what I'm about, and blah blah blah. Maybe. I don't know. It just seems like the whole let's create content for your brand for social media is probably not the best game to play, in my opinion. As an agency, right? Like everybody has to do it, which is great because that means the market's kind of big, but it also means there's a lot of different players, millions of people doing it. It also, you know what I mean? Like it also, it's what Peter Thiel talks about, right? He says the restaurant industry, and you're always like, no, I'm the only restaurant in this city or in this town that serves, traditional Indian food. And so you think like, oh, I've narrowed it down, like I'm the only one, I'm going to succeed. But then, people have options, right? Like they'll eat at home, they'll order pizza, they're not going to eat Indian every day. And so, you know what I mean? Like, so you end up competing with a bunch of people, and it's like, it's a very tough
Yeah,
business to be in. And social, like that's sort of how I see social media agencies. Like it's, they're interchangeable. You can just be like, okay, this guy's not gonna do it, this guy's gonna do it, and so I don't know.
you know, it's definitely. I mean, we never went with that. Again, later on, since 2019, 2020, we did avoid that because it became very like it became a commodity in the sense
yeah,
of like, oh, I need content for my Facebook. How much do you do? Do it for $1,000. Oh, okay. 1 week later, hey, what happened with the proposal that I sent you to do your social for $1,000? Oh, no worries, I found somebody who can do it for 400.
right. All right, I might
And then,
hire a couple interns, and they're filming and taking care of it. It's
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like you're not only competing with like the big social media agencies who do a really good job and they're huge. You're also competing with the guy who opened up yesterday, but you're also competing with freelancers. Like it's everywhere. There's no. It's very very difficult to carve a niche out. Having said that, like there's some people are doing it, obviously, but I would say like that's playing the agency game on hard mode. You know, like really hard mode because it's like why would you do why play the game on like legendary level. Sure, you can get there, and there are, and so for example, I think VaynerMedia, which is Gary Vaynerchuk's company, and he's built a personal brand, and so he's famous, and he's also working with really big companies with really big budgets, and he says it like right up front. He'll be like, if you're not spending over X amount of millions of dollars a year, like we can't be your agency. Like that's we're at the top. And so they're working with the Pepsis and the Nikes of the world, but even then, like they have, the strategy behind it. They'll be like, oh, this is how we do it. This is our methodology. We're going to run all these organics. We're going to run all this organic content. We work in cohorts. Like they have this whole thing where they can explain like logically why they're better at this than others. And so yeah, they've grown a lot. Like it can be done, but I think it's you would have to play at that level where you're like, okay, I really understand this personally. I built a brand. I built a personal brand as well, and I'm putting all these things together to grow it. It takes time and it takes a lot of effort. So I don't know. I wouldn't go that way. I really think like there are other ways to. You can touch on the social media stuff, but like maybe you're not a social media agency. I don't know.
no, no, I mean, again, that's what I was. That's what I am. Where I am
You're
right now.
doing.
It was just the thought of the strategy of if I have so again to put the viewer on the same page. If I have $100 right now to spend on increasing my agency this year, I wouldn't put I would put for like $50 into social media. So you get me out of like that type of like really trying to develop rather than a few years back when you was like, dude, social is the future. Here's $80. Or I don't know. I just and again, I'm talking about an agency looking for strategies within what it is that you do best.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
if you already you already hung your hat on doing social, then yeah, you probably and if you have a listener who does this and want to share their comment, like more than welcome. But I just feel that it's a very interesting market for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I was thinking like I think there has to be like a combination between what you want to do and what the market is sort of willing to pay for. And it's so interesting because I think we've talked about this, but it's marketing is so wide. It's like the entire ocean. You can, and it's like, okay, which way do I swim? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
do I do SEO? But wait, SEO might get killed by AI.
Yeah,
Should I do
I
social
mean,
media?
I always tell my people like we used to try to sell everything as an omnipresence marketing strategy, where
Yeah,
you are, you play the game, you you play the game everywhere, and pretty much, you give the same message and you amplify.
yeah,
Depending on the system, some things might be better for you. For example, if you're an e-commerce if you're doing e-commerce, you're selling a product, you know, yeah, like the right channel for you might be like a TikTok. Maybe there's just you can always channel that, but you always create an omnipresence and say, look, it's not I know that you're limited on budget, but let's try to play as much possible where that your target is going to hang out. This is what basically find out what your target market is and where your rating fan lives and
yeah.
have it out there.
Yeah, and I
But
think it really depends on. Well, the budget is a big thing, right? Like
no, yeah, of
that's
course.
going to determine. But I also think it's like at what point are we in the marketing in the world of marketing? Like what's working, what's not. So, for example, I had a company once um, where we would sell stevia, um, and that company was basically built on the back of Facebook because when we started doing Facebook back then, it was like all very new and organic reach was high. And so if you found followers, they would see 100% of your posts. Imagine the, the
Yeah,
date. It's like 2000 and what is it, like 9 or something. So they would see everything. So, and everyone was on Facebook. It was like through the roof, right? So we got a lot of awareness that way. And then we also, Stevia was kind of new in the world. So we would go to these conferences, like the gathering of all the nutritionists of the country, and they had like this big conference. And so we'd go there, have a stand, and we'd give out the product, and that would like that. It was for free, obviously, but it was hotcakes, right? Like everyone was like, "I want one. Let me see. What is this about?" We
the
had
traditional marketing.
yeah, we had like I don't know, 1,000 conversations over a weekend or something. It was crazy, right? And it was also because it was a market that not a lot of people were going after. The nutritionists, like a lot of people are like, no, we focus on doctors and blah blah. I'm like, oh, we're going to focus on nutritionists, and it was sort of an empty market, right? So we came in and we were the new thing. Everybody else was like the same old companies from before, and this is like a new company, a new product. What is this about? Stevia is new as well. So and then so I would say it was a combination of like Facebook and digital, right? So, but mostly Facebook. Um, the nutritionist. So we went to these conferences, and like obviously, if you convince one nutritionist, they see a bunch of patients every day, so you have more scale. And then we also did like sampling at supermarkets, and then people would taste it and take a box with them. And we figured out that the sampling we could run it super cheaply, and what was sold that day was enough to cover the cost of the sampling. So we would just do samplings all the time. Yeah. Um, and it was like, but that's like, you know what I mean? Like that was a strategy basically. And we sort of bumped into it, right? We tried some other stuff, but that was the strategy. And we ended up with millions in sales, and it went well, like it wasn't very sophisticated, but obviously in marketing, we could have done a bunch of other stuff. Like we could have tried geofencing. We could have done like, we're going to do radio ads. We're going to do TV commercials.
Yeah, at that time you were probably also limited too.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
all the other outlets were pretty expensive too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe they were expensive and we were limited. Maybe that's a good thing, right? Like the constraints are usually not necessarily bad. But I just think like it's tough sometimes because you have so many options, especially nowadays. Like you could do, I don't know. We're running a bunch of experiments and doing all these things, but at the end of the day, like and this is one of the things I want to talk about because basically, we as a company, we were sort of viewing Twitter, we were seeing all these things. We saw a post that I thought was really cool, and it basically talked about how they were able to sell. I think it was like these rings. I don't know, these plastic rings or something, and it talked about how they ran ads and their ads are super successful and they sold a bunch. And then obviously you're like, okay, great, the ads are working. Let's do more of that. And like a junior marketer or like the naive marketer would be like, okay, let's just put all our budget into ads. It's working. When you've been in the game long enough, you're like, oh, wait. it's working, but it might be working because we're doing all this other stuff too.
Yeah, you don't
Uh,
know. You don't know why the soup tastes good. You
right.
put it.
Right. And so you're like, oh, the ads are working. Let's just put the budget there. But then like, oh, wait, but don't you can't stop doing all this other stuff. So we had a conversation with a client maybe a year ago. They're like, no, we're going to stop doing content and focus on like, tending to the leads we have and blah blah blah. And like, and we were like, okay, fine. We don't have to work together. That's fine. It's your decision. But I was like, but you're turning off like the one
Awesome.
thing that's been working for the last 3 years. And we've built this up, and now you have organic traffic, and you have leads that are coming in, you have inbound leads, you have all these things that are sort of working in your favor. So the winds, you've been able to put up a big enough sail that the wind is sort of carrying you, but you're going to take it down, and you're just going to rely on what we did for those 3 years. And then what are you going to do? Like, what's going to happen afterwards? Like, no, we're going to run some Google ads. It's like, okay, but then like you're turning off the organic, you're turning off, and you're turning on the paid. How is that going to like? I don't think they understood that it's an ecosystem of things, right?
Yeah,
Um,
when that happens to me, I'm like, look, it's like you've been eating veggies and eating healthy to get healthy. Great, awesome. You got to your ideal weight. Okay, so this doesn't mean that you're gonna start eating burgers and pizza all the time. You have to still eat your veggies.
yeah,
And
yeah,
content and organic and these and you be living in these spaces what has gotten you here right now. Like, why are you gonna stop for immediate gratification or just to cut down 5 grand out of your marketing budget? It's like, come on,
yeah,
stop.
yeah. It's and so and basically the post was talking about that, and it was talking about like, okay, these are all the things we did before we ran the ad. And so like we gave it to influencers, we went to these conferences, we were at the gyms, we did this, like all these different tactics and strategies within their target market. So that by the time the person sees the ad, they're like, oh, I know what that is. Oh, I've been wanting one of those. Oh, I saw, so and so was wearing one. I wonder what this is about. And like you're familiar with the product. And they use the example of the movie Focus. Have you seen that movie with
Focus
Will
no.
Smith? Okay, it's a movie, and then they talk about like I'll show you. I'll send you the clip. It's really interesting. But it's basically like they're able to win a bet with a guy because the guy sees a number and thinks he's thinking of it by himself, and he's like, oh, 55, whatever the number is. He's like,
Yeah.
oh, like this that's my number, and like they're able to guess it because they've been basically like
They're
priming him
subliminally,
priming him all day, right? Like he's seen the number a million times throughout the day, and he doesn't know it, right? Unconsciously. And I think somehow that's sort of how it works in marketing. Like you're not really sure what part of the brain you're occupying, when you're occupying it, what they're seeing, what they're taking in. And I always tell my friends, look, I've noticed that when I'm watching TV, if I see a number of ads for hamburgers, for example, for burgers, it doesn't matter who's showing me the ad. It could be like, McDonald's burger. It could be any of these. The brand doesn't really matter there. But I know that weekend, like I've noticed it. Oh, like we'll eat a burger, and I'll be like, oh, I want a burger, and then Lisa will be like, oh, I want one too. And then it's like, oh wait, have you noticed we've been seeing, we saw 15 commercials on burgers, and we're going to the one spot we like, or we'll go to the restaurant that we like. We're not going to the brands that are showing the commercial. But it's that realization of like, oh, we're not really always conscious of our choices. And I think in marketing it can be very confusing because it's like the entire ocean could be at your disposal within your budget, obviously, but like, maybe you don't do TV commercials, but you can do something else. And there are so many options based on your audience and what you want and etc. that it can be very confusing to know which ones to pick. And then once you pick them, how to measure that, and then how to understand like that whole ecosystem, right? Like how do I make sure that my target audience is aware, and when they're ready that they come to me, and then I sound familiar by the time they want to make a choice. Like it's all these different things, right? And so it's not just let me just run the ad and we'll see. It's like how do I build all that, cohesively? I think that's what's super interesting about marketing, and that's the hard part. And I don't know, think that this is I think it's hard for marketers because we get caught up on like, okay, we're just gonna do this. These are our four tactics. This is what we're doing. It's like, okay, but how are you generating the general awareness, and how are you driving people, and how are you converting?
that is,
And
again, that is, from the beginning of the conversation on the show. It's not I don't value it. I think if you're gonna be, you need to do creative marketing for your social media. You need to talk about your product properly. You need to be clever. You need to like that is really highly encouraged and important because of what you're saying. It's gonna be after what's it after the third time that somebody sees a product is when they realize that I really want it, or I really needed it. So you do have to build that within your strategy. Not taking down on that, but at the same time, I just feel that right now doing all this work for organic marketing on social, on these type of platforms, it's just difficult because, as you said, now it's an algorithm thing, which it's a good argument. Definitely thinking the back, but I do feel that it is more of like how much money you can put into good advertisement. So like if you're gonna do an ad, you have to be a kick-ass ad, and we're gonna put
Yeah,
money
yeah,
into it so that ad does show as many times as possible. That and the whole concept of like, well, so how do you do ads now? Well, you have to do the ad, but it cannot be intrusive, but you cannot make it feel like an ad, but it has to be an ad, but it's all like very eggshell walk. I mean, well, if it's
yeah,
good, it's good.
yeah, yeah. And I think of it's the whole ad thing is also like the short term, right? Like, oh, we want the sale. Let's just make the ad and we'll try and sell. And I think that it works for certain industries, but I that over dependence on ads is really mostly a bad idea, right? Like you don't
PPC,
control.
PPC brings you PPC brings you clicks, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, I had a lot of clicks, and I spent a lot of money on it, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, we did great. We had 1,000 visitors, but then it cost you your product pretty much didn't make any profit because you spent
Yeah,
way too much money on the PPC.
yeah. So I think it's like maybe it's maybe the answer is like, okay, let's. The thing is, I think the budget really gets in the way because let's say you go in and you say, I'm going to do the consulting. I'm going to tell you, like, there's this whole ocean of possibilities for marketing. I've seen a lot of them. I've executed a bunch of them. Obviously, nobody's ever
I,
executed everything.
I'm being here as your consultant because I have explored and dabbled
Right.
into
You're
things.
like you're right. You're Christopher Columbus. Like you've been there and come back, and so you know what it's like, and you can tell. Like you can say, like, well, don't
I
land
am the
here.
sommelier. I am the sommelier, and I have had all these wines, and these ones are the ones that I've been drinking.
Right. Like Christopher Columbus, don't land here. The Indians will kill you. You'll hit
Yeah.
the rocks. Land here. Um, and I think so. I think you could say like, okay, I'm going to come in, but there has to be enough budget for you to say, this is what I'm charging, and I'm going to build out the strategy, and this is what you're going to do, and then I either help you find a company that can do that or can do several things. So let's say we're going to do ads, and then I come in as a consultant and say, okay, either we hire a person that does this, and this is the cost, or we hire this company that can do this, and I know I've vetted them, I've worked with them before, they're very good at this, and that's how we're going to run the ads. But over here, we're doing organic content, and this is the company you should be using, or this is the kind of content we should be like. You would have to design the whole strategy for them, and then help them maybe find suppliers. But then the budget has to be big enough to pay you, and then to also pay the different suppliers or hire the different people to do the different things, right? So you couldn't work with small businesses because
No. This has to be outside out. I will be playing in another league because
yeah,
even though I have had done this before, where I've been 25 years working for Mr. Company here, and right now I feel that it's my time for being an entrepreneur. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, so great, congratulations, welcome to entrepreneurship. What's your budget? Well, the bill to the restaurant was supposed to be 100 grand, and then it turned out to be 180 grand, and blah blah blah. Well, so what's the budget at the end? Well, it's $5,000. And they're like, okay, so for $5,000, you really cannot do much. What I can do is with that money, I can give you a strategy, and then you can go and implement it. Oh yeah, that's great. A client pays us $5,000. You give them strategy. 4 months later, 3 months later, you check on that person. The person didn't implement the strategy. The person didn't do anything with it because at the end it's like, yeah, I probably gave him my know-how or the what they're supposed to do, the map, but at the same time they just didn't have the car to drive that map. They probably they had to commit to do it on foot. Not everybody. I think out of 10 cases that this happens, probably two they take it too hard, and they are the true entrepreneur who this is my thing, and you go ahead and do it. Most of them if they have to do it on their own, they just can't do it. So yeah, you're right. You have to be able to if you're doing the consultancy correctly, it's like, okay, so this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do it, and here are a few people who can help you get there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so. You'd have to pick like companies that are a little bit bigger, and then like you might have to do a few of them for free at the beginning, and then say like, okay, if I do this and it works out and you're happy, will you give me, like a good case study, a good review, etc. You know, sort of to build that reputation, and then like there are several avenues, and I think that's what's so confusing, dude. Like you can do so many things. Um,
Oh, oh,
it's
and also, I mean, I can tell you, like, I can give you my best marketing strategy coming out of my brain and my experience and all that stuff. You can have another person that has the same experience that I have, the same years of experience, the same stuff, and the person can, I can give you my recipes. Every day, go drink hot chocolate, and then the other person can actually say, every day you have to go and drink some tea and coffee. Like marketing, you do have a lot of that because
yeah.
you have a lot of options
And they can both work. Like that's what's interesting, right? Because otherwise, like nobody would like very few people would be successful, and that's not really the case. There's a lot of people that do succeed in marketing. So there's no like right or wrong answers. I think it's just more like, I mean, there are wrong answers. Like you can be doing something that just doesn't work. But I think it's a matter of like understanding where the constraints are. So if it's I only have $5,000, so like okay, so whatever we build has to work with a budget of basically very very small budget. I don't know, $1,000, $5,000, whatever the number is. Whatever we build has to work and bring in leads, hopefully organically or through referrals, or like what are we doing that allows us to, with very very little budget, sort of generate the awareness that we need. So the strategy could be like, I'm going to go and find 20 people that work, and we talked about this internally. I'm going to go find 20 people. I'm going to build relationships with 20 people that could recommend me to clients. So if I'm an agency, I'm going to talk to consultants. I'm going to talk to other agencies that don't do what I do, that maybe they can refer customers to me. We just had a meeting about this yesterday, so some of these are fresh. But you could say I'm going to build those 20 relationships, and they're going to do the selling for me, and I'm just going to focus on being the top of mind for those 20 different people that could refer customers to me. And maybe that's the strategy because you have no money, but you have time. And so you're going to go and reach out, or you're going to send them content, you're going to be there, you're going to be like, oh, look, now we're doing this, show them the case studies, you're doing all these different things. I'm going to work for free for a while. And then that gives you a little bit of leverage because then you have 20 people that are actually recommending you. If you do a good enough job, then you'll have leads all year long, right? And you'll have work. And then you didn't do social media, you didn't do the traditional stuff, you didn't do paid media, you didn't have money for that. Maybe all you did was build those relationships.
you do it voice to voice, yeah, face to face. I mean, that's just pretty much putting your time into it.
Yeah, and maybe, but you know what I mean? Like maybe, so the budget is a big constraint, but also like your time and human resources and what your brand is about. Because maybe this works for B2B, but if you're B2C, that's much harder. Um, or maybe it's not. Maybe like you're B2C and you're selling a fitness watch, and you can go and talk to different gym guys and coaches and all these different people, and sort of find your niche and be there. So I think it really is a custom job. Like it's not like you just apply these things and like
No,
you'll be okay. Like you really need, it really depends on the timing and your budget and everything. And then what we talked about last time, remember, it was like maybe the job of the marketer is to say, sure, these are all options, but according to your circumstances, your budget, etc., this is your best option. And let's not do Instagram because Instagram is super saturated. We're going to do Threads. We're going to do Twitter. We're going to do, I don't know, something else where it's not so crowded and we can maximize your dollars. And this is how we're going to play this game based on what you have, right?
yeah, no, it is funny because a lot of people, yeah, no, it also too depends on the risk, how risk prone or averse is the new client, or how aware it is about marketing, or how much they think they know about it. which is the whole other thing where I'm having meetings with clients that are like trying to teach me about what I do. I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
How's that working out for you? The and the other thing was let's talking about case studies. So you see the whole Stanley Cup thing that has gone down viral for a bit.
No. What's the story?
So Stanley's a company that
Oh
sells
yeah.
yeah
The
they,
cup.
they have Starbucks for like 100 years or so for like the working man. It was like the one that you little brought your thermos to like
Yeah.
the work construction site and all that stuff, and then new president comes in and it says like, look, we think that uh, the story goes as something as somebody was using the cup and they were like, oh, I really like the cup, and then it was like a blogger or a blogger or an influencer. This is a few years back, that had like, we'll say on Oprah, but it's somebody like that. So saying, okay, this is a great cup. It keeps you insulated and all that stuff, and I love it. I take it to the gym, I take it to work and all that stuff. And, some people started really liking it and they started buying it. But it wasn't until the new president realized that he's like, well, how about we just stop doing this working, but we just started, with it. And we're just going to grab the cup and do a huge diversification of colors and, so that everybody can have their own color, bringing the whole thing about like, I am a girl that likes to wear, I like a yellow cup because that represents who I am, and, pink and whatever. And, that, so it became a hugely trend. And then, not a few weeks back, Stanley came out with this like partnership with like Starbucks, and then you have to like buy these Starbucks Stanley Cup. Like, I mean, this is a mug that has I think normally an insulated mug could run you between, I don't know. The joke is that you can buy this from like $10 at Walmart to like $30. These things are going for like $300. It's like
Wow.
people are really, really,
I
really.
actually, now that you mentioned, I saw a guy on social media try to steal from a Starbucks. He's trying to steal a whole box of those Stanleys, and he got stopped. It was really funny. It was just this big guy trying to steal it. I heard, I don't know if this is true, but I heard that that sort of also had to do with the pandemic because a lot of people were working from home and they would have their Stanley Cup sort of visible while they were in meetings. And
I
so,
mean, possibly. I honestly, the thing is that what I believe in is the what I like to share is that it's very trends. It's like trends. It's like we laughed about it because there was this guy. I'll share the video, but there's this guy like on Instagram. He was just like, what, like, hey, this is the new bug in town that is popular. Every brand, like, there's a lot of brands that come in and they get very popular now. Like, I remember when I got an Nalgene bottle. Like back in the day, I got a Nalgene bottle, and I was like, wow, you have a Nalgene bottle, that's so cool. It was orange, and it was like really, really cool. And then it became 3 years ago, it was like, do you have a Yeti cup? Do you have Yeti? Can't
mhm.
pronounce it that why well, but it's and that was like the fans like, oh, everyone's getting the Yeti cooler, getting the Yeti. And I mean, I have a Yeti mug and I love it. Uh, but then it became this thing about like, okay, well, no, this one has a handle and it has a straw. And then Stanley came out with a handle and a straw, but it's like stainless steel. So it's one of those things that I don't know what a trend began. I think like a lot of it's just you go to the gym and you want people to know that you're having the $35 mug. Stanley, Starbucks mug, you have it when you go to the gym and people can see you. It's very trendy.
Social signaling, yeah. I also saw a video of a woman who her car got burnt down. Did you see that? And inside there was a Stanley Cup, and the Stanley mug survived the whole fire. The whole car got burnt down, but the mug survived. And I think that was I don't know if this is staged or not, but apparently like the drink was still cold or something, and
Uh,
so Stanley, the CEO of Stanley, found out about this, and then they invited her over and they gave her mugs or something, and maybe a prize. I don't know what it was. I can't remember, but it went viral. The fact that the car was burnt down and the thing survived basically, and there was still liquid inside, and apparently, apparently still cold. So it was. I think maybe that was like the initial ignition of the fire, because that was a
okay,
few months ago. That was like maybe 4 or 5 months ago.
I actually uh, I don't know. I read an article. We just got to handle that, like, due to my environmentalist beliefs, I don't like buying. I drink bottled water because everybody has to, but I don't drink it as I drink it as, if I go to somewhere and I need water, but I don't have it in my house. I drink it. I drink it with a mug. So I wanted to get a new mug, and then I did some research on that, and then they were telling me, okay, well, these are the ones that are, the most popular brands, and this is why, and insulation and all stuff. Well, Jetty was in there, and Stanley was in there, and Hydro Flask was in there. I ended up getting a Hydro Flask. Uh, Biggest reason is because it fits on my car, and I like the color and whatever. But the thing that is was very cool is that, like, it is there's I think Time Magazine came out with, like, like the ratings of the best mugs and all that stuff. Stanley has always been there. Like, it's always been. It's 100-year-old so brand. So it's not this is not like a fad out of nowhere that, like, what, like. But then all of a sudden they just kind of. I mean, the whole point is it goes with also a story of the marketing behind it, which is like, Stanley. It's made for rugged steel, like construction work, like, will keep your foot, keep your drink cold and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden they just found out that it became a trend, and all of a sudden they're like, what, guys, you know let's double segment. Let's still maintain our segment for the working men or whatever, but let's do this for this huge thing where. Um, that increase it's something that they went from, like, making, I don't know, it's like 100 million, they were making like $10 million a year to, like, now making like $400 million a year. Just by doing a complete segmenting on just picking on women of a certain age that are looking into this, and then just by grabbing the cup and doing it in a certain in much of different colors.
Yeah, and I think that's the main lesson probably for marketers. It's like, okay, so we've been in business for 10 years and we've been focusing on this audience.
And
Um,
the product is good, and everybody should.
and you keep plugging at it, right? Like you're doing more media, more communication channels and more marketing efforts. You're pounding that audience, but then somebody can come around and say, "Let's why don't we just change the color, change the messaging, change this, and why don't we talk about like this whole other segment of the population we haven't reached yet?" And this can happen in B2B or B2C, right? But I think the lesson there is always to be open to the idea of like you might not be talking to the right audience, or maybe you've been talking to the right audience, but you're sort of saturated in that market, and there's this whole other adjacent market you haven't talked about.
I agree. I think that my whole point of the story with that is, as you're saying, it's like a lot of times as marketers or business owners, you put your blinders on as a
Yeah,
horse forward. Oh, I know my business. This is what we've been doing. This is how we've been doing it for the past 99 years. Somebody comes in and says, look, there is a segment of the population who we can definitely target. They like it. How about we,
yeah,
how about we give some love? And look,
yeah. So maybe you're an agency and you've been working with like small and medium businesses, and you're like, "Oh, that's my niche. I'm doing this and blah blah blah." Or maybe you're like, "Oh, but maybe maybe I could work with creators, with people who are like trying to get their personal brand out." That's a whole different segment of the population. And there's all these young kids and want to be YouTube stars, and maybe I could, sort of help them with, I don't know, something, right? The creative side or the strategy, whatever. Maybe that's a whole different ballgame. Or maybe you're like, oh, maybe I've been working with creators, but like, you know what? Doctors that become influencers, in their own right, tend to do really well because then they can build other products and services. And maybe that's my niche. Maybe I can focus on that. It begs the question: what are we missing? Like, what's that adjacent market that maybe we're not comfortable with or haven't even thought of that could be the biggest growth hack you could do for 2024, right?
okay. Have you seen do you ever see Ted Lasso, the
Yeah,
show? Okay. So it's kind of like, if you're a good coach, I mean, let's say if you're a person that is a good coach and all that stuff, and you're doing great at football, you can also do it great at soccer. Now, this is just, this is a fantasy world, but it is, you do have a certain set of skills that could really, as you were saying before, like,
could be
if I
trying.
was working with
Yeah,
YouTubers and I have this certain set of skills, I can also pass it to, you know, medical and influencers and all that stuff. I also like the one that you mentioned before, which is the story of, hi, I have a great company. I just need somebody who can be the face of it. You're a good influencer. How about you have stake on my company?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's dangerous though because you're giving a stake away for that, and you have to be
Yeah,
really sure, but you can test it. Yeah, and
But
maybe
I
that,
really,
yeah, maybe that's the way you end up with millions in sales, and then you can sell it later or something. Like like it's like it's that's that phrase, right? You only have to get rich once, and then if you play it right, you can stay that way. And so
like Basilos, yo quiero pegar mi primer millón. Y después
exactly,
pego el segundo, ya mi
yeah,
primer millón.
and then I'm done. Yeah. And so anyway, interesting. So the whole Stanley thing, I think, is has a lot of lessons there, right? And also making sure you don't just leave the virality to to luck, and you actually execute on, okay, this happened. Let me see what can we do to respond
Yeah,
to that. You know,
I, I think it's funny because since I'm here in the States and here it's just media entertainment consumption and media consumption and stuff like the Stanley thing here is it's just a pretty big deal.
yeah,
But like yeah, it's been one of those things that like people were fighting for it. Like
yeah.
I mean, if you go to eBay, like let's just I mean just for the giggles.
Well, you know what though? Another lesson could be like, in order to attack that adjacent market, you need to partner with someone, and maybe you don't even know what the adjacent market is, but maybe you can find cool brands that you can partner with to make your service, your product, you know, different and more appealing, and then take it from there, right?
Yeah. They have look. They have what was that sample $124. The Starbucks one that I told you about sells here for $55, and this is a I think it's like a $30 comp. I mean, I think the excitement is kind of dying down because they were like selling them for like $300, which is like